020 722 42000.
Text 81333. Start your message with the word London.
BBC London 94.9.
Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. Taking your calls Monday to Thursday night, 10 till 1 on 0207 224 2000. More of your calls coming through, more reaction through until 1. I'm delighted to say that in this hour of the programme, we welcome Juliet Mann to the programme. It's her first night with us tonight, so we will be very kind and give you 3 mentions to your career. Juliet is a broadcast journalist, a conference moderator and a media coach, and we welcome you. Delighted to see you on the programme tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for coming in. Jonathan Davis is an economist and a wealth manager. You've been debating outside because obviously some of your areas coincide in terms of the journalism and the financial world. And I'm delighted to say you do part company on some views so far with...
Oh yes, we've agreed on some things and we've disagreed on others. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation.
No, me too. When Juliet came in, I was explaining our discussions in the past, Jonathan, because obviously you've been here significant numbers of times now, and Juliet summed it up by saying, well, is he a doomer? Is he a doomer? I don't think you're a total doomer, right? I think you choose to deliver this as a realist, you would argue.
I'm in the business of preserving people's capital, and if people buy the hype that the politicians and indeed the media put out, then God help them financially.
Right, there we are, see. I told you, Juliet. And Juliet, just briefly, in terms of financially, so we kind of know where, because this doesn't all have to be about finance at all, but so we know where you stand. You obviously you have a financial background.
Sure, but I'm not a wealth manager. I'm not moving other people's money. I don't have as many pots of it as I'd like either.
But it can all be changed at any point.
Yes,
you
at
could
any
win
moment,
that lottery. Your premium bond numbers could come up at any stage.
That would be absolutely fantastic.
Assuming you do the lottery or have premium bonds.
I have both.
Oh.
I have. Well, you've got to be in it to win it. Isn't that a tagline?
You do.
It is.
Right. Okay. That's good. Although, as you may know, the premium bonds are about to fiddle with their rates once again. I think come in the summer?
Is this so that you can't have as that bigger jackpot?
You can have more.
More winners
you can have more
of
money,
smaller amounts.
Exactly. Indeed. So yeah.
Oh, there's always a con on, isn't there? We're always losing out somewhere. It gets dressed up as something splendid and fantastic. But
somewhere along the line, there's always a problem. And,
I'm an optimist. I think you've always got to look out for that glimmer. That yes, buy that lottery ticket, buy that premium bond token, and
is there a glimmer? Is there a glimmer to be found?
I quite like premium bonds. As long as you've got a sizable number of them, you're not going to get much more than the standard deposit rate that you get at banks, mill societies. But my goodness, particularly if you don't tick the box where any winnings automatically get added on, but they get sent to you in a white envelope. There's nothing better on a Saturday morning going to the front door and seeing that 9x4 white envelope and just wondering, just for 10 seconds, is this the big one? And then it's 25 quid.
Because of the time of month that it comes through, it came through this year on my birthday, and I got this email saying, we've got some very good news from Ernie. I can never remember what that sounds like. Electronic random number something. Anyway, all I'm interested in is whether he's got £1 million for it, and he didn't. And of course, it was just the 25 quid. But still, as you say, that excitement still never leaves us, and you always get your money back. Well, that's the promise anyway. 0207 224 2000. Let's get underway then. Let's start, if we can, with you, Jonathan. And there's lots of stories you brought in, and largely, obviously, a lot of them have a financial leaning. Can we talk about Barclays? Because for many people, Barclays was a bank that was safe, didn't take any money from the taxpayer, and was in hugely wonderful financial health.
Yeah, well, in 2008, with the global banking collapse, they were one of the global banks which wasn't bailed out by the taxpayers. Instead, in effect, they were bailed out by selling a chunk of themselves to Middle Eastern billionaires, which is fair enough. That's business. They've done exceptionally well for a few years, and the headline is that their earnings have cut sharply, not so much down to the normal banking of lending and deposit taking, but because of their investment business. And the investment side, based in Canary Wharf, has taken a very big hit, and that's affected global earnings, and indeed their shares have gone down significantly today, the share price. I think it's symptomatic. We shouldn't really focus so much on Barclays. I think it's symptomatic of what's happening in global banking right now. It's fascinating, actually, that if you ask someone about the stock market, they'd say, "Oh, it's flying high," but you have to look deeper than that. Well, you say that, but take the FTSE, for example, the top 100 companies in the UK. Actually, the index is no higher than practically a year ago. Certainly May last year. I don't know the exact date. So I don't know about flying high. But the banking sector, which of course is one of the largest sectors of the stock market, has actually been falling for the last few months. And all I can tell you is banking normally leads to the upside, and it normally leads to the downside. So watch this space if you're heavily into the stock market.
Potentially it's a warning. Just before we get some reaction from Juliet on this, in terms of the banks, for those who see this from an outsider's point of view, as I do, and many of our listeners will, there was this idea that all the banks will have this brick wall built down the middle, and that their investment arm, we spoke about the Barclays investment arm, will be different from, for example, the high street we all go into. That has all happened now, is it?
Are you talking about in terms of the Chinese walls between the retail activities? Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, theoretically and legally, the true banking side of things should not be telling the investment side of things what they're up to, and vice versa. Well, your guess is as good as mine as to whether or not that's in reality happening. Take the sale off of Royal Mail, for example. I can't remember which bank it was. Was it Lazard? I can't remember. On the one side, I think it was Lazard, helped the government sell Royal Mail, and on the other side, the investment side made a fortune. Now, isn't that funny?
Yeah, but although in their defence, when I heard a government minister speaking about this only in the last 3 or 4 days, with the debate about the share prices once again was in the headlines, and said, but they are separate entities.
Yeah.
I will add that in for fear of not providing the total on this. Juliet, do you have, I mean, don't you tell us the details of your market portfolio. Do you worry about do you have any reason to worry about what happens to the stock market?
Well, I think we all do. I think we've got to keep an eye on what's going on. What I think the issue is that UK investors don't take as much interest as others in other parts of the world do. We're not really a nation of shareholders as they are in the States, for example. And that kind of apathy, that lack of interest, I think has an impact.
Although it's surprising that we're not, because when you think about British Gas from many years ago, British Telecom, all the big share issues we saw in the 80s and early 90s, you would be wondering why we are not more of a share-owning culture.
But we're not. If you think about it, all of those financial channels like CNBC, Bloomberg, they're all set up for little old ladies with their nest eggs who are out there in America, counting their pennies out, working out what they're going to do, which shares they're going to have. And we just still don't have that culture. I remember when I started out in financial journalism, I thought we're going to see a change, that my generation is going to spearhead my generation of financial journalists, if you like, are going to spearhead this new trend. And 20 years on, it still hasn't happened. Everyone's sceptical. We're far less risk takers, I think.
And why do you think that is?
Well, the banks also have that bad reputation. And I suppose that, in America, the land of the free, everyone thinks, well, yes, it's that land of opportunity. Why not me? I'm going to get in there. And I think we're still saddled in the United Kingdom with that feeling, well, it's not going to be me. More of that negative opinion. And when you look at the mess that the banks are in right now, I mean, it's just been the Barclays story has been reasonably horrific, hasn't it? And retail banking seems to be doing well, but investment banking's on its knees. We had the LIBOR scandal, all of that, and people are put off. People want a safe bet.
And this is the confusing thing for many people, because I think one of the issues that a lot of people have with the free market, capitalism, stocks and shares, call it what you will, is that arguably it's entirely built on something that most people don't understand, and that is sentiment. And because so much of it is about sentiment, we've seen it probably more than once in our lives get sentimentally out of hand. So it gets built and it gets built and it gets built and everyone gets excited. Who is the great person of finance. He said, was it Buffett who says, when people are fearful, become greedy. When people are greedy, become fearful. Who knows who to listen to? Because everyone has a reason for telling you one thing or another.
But people get caught up with it. Go on.
Everyone has an agenda. The pundits that we hear on the radio or see on the television or in the press and the business pages, they have an agenda. They have they're talking their own shop, as we say. If they've got something to sell, they want to sell some shares, then I find all too often, unfortunately, the media gives them a platform to say, go and buy this stock, actually, while they're selling. And of course, the politicians have an agenda to talk up everything. The estate agents have an agenda to talk up everything. The bankers, of course, have an agenda to talk up everything, because otherwise they're not going to get their vast bonuses. I would say, bearing in mind what you said of me at the top of the hour, I would say that people need to be very careful, because in 2007 there were very few of us out in the media saying things are going to hit the fan, and often we were laughed at because sentiment, to use your word, was sky high. There was a mania. You couldn't walk past a television without someone saying, go out and borrow a vast amount of money and buy a house. And then look what happened in 2008. And actually, sentiment's pretty high right now. And that does actually make me start to wonder, hold on a minute, if sentiment's so good, where's that going to lead us? And as I say, for example, particularly because we're looking at the stock market, I see signs out there that 2014 may not be as positive as some people make it out to be.
I'd love to hear from you at home. If you are somebody who's invested in shares but doesn't really either know what your portfolio is, what you've got, you may have just got some small amount of holding in British Gas when it was privatised, or British Telecom, or any of the other big formerly nationalised industries in this country, or companies that are now in the private sector. I'd love to hear from you what you think, what you have, how you make your decisions, and whether you think that actually you even understand, because often, certainly in this election that we're going to have in 2015, huge numbers of people will be voting on the basis of the economy as far as their family is concerned, and certainly it's high on the agenda of all parties to make you feel as well off and as happy and as successful as they can, and whether that in any way has shaped any of your decisions. It is interesting, because I mean, when people talk about money, people talk about wealth, most people speak, and certainly I do, and I'm sure most of our listeners do, their income, their wage, and the bills at the end of the month. That is it. That is most of our world. Anything outside of that is impossibly difficult to navigate through.
It's got to be the short term. It's got to be what matters to me. And actually, we were talking about it just before we kicked off this hour. You were talking about that poll, how people are really disengaged and they might not even vote in the next election. And I was thinking back to when I first had the vote, and I was studying politics. I definitely was going to go and use that vote. But which issues were important to me? Well, no, I wasn't bothered about the budget, because I didn't have a job yet. Okay, yes, I had student bills and what have you, and loans, but I wasn't that bothered about it. And it wasn't until I got a job and I was paying taxes that those things became important to me. And in terms of house prices, in terms of interest rates, again, it wasn't until I was buying a home that those things came on my radar. And I think that's symptomatic of everyone, really. We want to sort ourselves out. What does it matter to me in my everyday before we look at the bigger picture? It would be nice if we all were more altruistic and we looked at that bigger picture, but it's hard to be when you're working out how to budget your week.
I was going to add as well that I think people on the whole just have this belief that really, I think they've been brainwashed into believing that something will always turn up, that someone will do something. Take, for example, going back to 2008, the biggest economic and financial collapse in history by that time, simple fact, and depression was in the air. What was going to happen? It was going to be terrible. There was going to be 5 million unemployed, and so on and so on. And then people did things. The governments of the world got together and slashed interest rates. They bailed out the banks. And on the face of it, in terms that the British people view, everything basically got going again. Well, as an economist, all I saw was that we borrowed £1,000 billion from the next generation. And absolutely nothing was sorted. All that happened was the can was kicked down the line until, unfortunately, okay, here I go again, until the next time it happens again.
We will debate this further. Keep your thoughts coming through. Certainly this started off about Barclays Investment Bank, but obviously this is all about us. It's all about the way that our financial future is going to be either secure or insecure, and what we understand of it. 0207 224 2000 is our number. Jonathan Davis, economist and wealth manager. Juliet Mann, a journalist, conference moderator and media coach, together review the day this hour. Juliet, can we talk about angry birds, please?
A little change of pace. Well, I have to say I agree with Jonathan that we are. We've put a band-aid over it. We all think it's okay when people have just piled on debt onto their credit cards. The debt hasn't gone away, has it? And the problem is still festering away. Yes, Angry Birds. Now, this...
For those who don't know what Angry Birds is, let's start with that, because there will be a steep learning curve to be found this hour. Come on.
It's a computer game. It's one of those computer games that kids and grown-ups get hooked on. I think it's a cartoon bird that gets a bit cross and that it catapults pigs and various creatures. And anyway, it's in an obstacle course that's a computer game. And
highly addictive, they say, for those who play it on their phones.
Time-consuming. The kids can't put it down. And then, you can see this game going on your eyelids when you go to sleep at night.
My kids under 10, they absolutely adore this game.
They love it, don't they?
Yep.
And because even younger kids, they can get an iPad and just work out how to catapult with a swipe of the finger. It's amazing how dexterous they can become.
They're far better at it than I am.
Absolutely. But amazingly to me, there's a woman who's about to become the head of the College of Teaching. She says that Angry Birds and games like it should be on the national curriculum. She said, well, do you know what? Kids can learn skills for life. They can learn resilience, concentration and problem solving. I mean, this is the head of a new professional body for teachers. And of course, she's writing a book, so I think part of she's billing it as the new digital age and how we can use all the tools of the digital age in educating our children. But I kind of love to hate this story. I'm not sure what I think, because on the one hand, my kids love it. They love games like this, and another one called Minecraft, which is effectively Lego, but electronically. You have to build a world by getting different bits and pieces together. Go and search for the wood in a woodland area, come back, build your castle and what have you.
So it's basically an outward bound course in the front of the comfort of your own home. Yeah,
it's kind of outward bound Lego. It's construction. But for me, it's their downtime. And we let them have a section of 15 minutes or so, which can often stretch.
I was going to say 15 minutes is remarkably
theory,
strict and successful.
And they're quiet and they're focused, and that's what they do. I don't like the idea of them having that as part of the curriculum as well, because there has to be. Can it be right to be staring at a screen all day? I mean, as adults, we've had this. Yeah, it is the modern world, but you get a bad neck and you get a bad back, and then there's issues with the eyes and get a special filter. Isn't it enough that they can do it in a bit of downtime? Do we need to incorporate that? Let's teach them the other life skills they need to have, like reading,
this professor
like numeracy.
This professor says she became hooked on a game called Lemmings, which is similar to Angry Birds. And
I think it was one of the precursors to
I think
Angry
it was,
Birds.
yeah. And I remember Lemmings, because that was played even when we had basic computers many years ago. I remember somebody in the office years ago when I used to work somewhere else played Lemmings. She says, you really have to think and get your strategy right. It teaches skills that are applicable to life, and they can be very compelling. And it's almost as if you said to a child, now, we've got a bit of trouble here. You want to play this game. We need to find out a reason for you to play this game. And here we now have the reason, rather than the other way round.
Well, my kids are not going to see this article, that's for sure.
I can think of times when I was at university, hours wasted away when I should have been studying Plato and Socrates. And instead I was trying to do this Minesweeper game, thinking, I'll do it the next one. I'll do it the next time. into a world, and it's a complete waste of time.
And you can lose hours that way. Have you succumbed to these, Jonathan? I imagine you probably
when
haven't.
I was a student,
Right.
which was 1,000 years ago, when you still had Space Invaders.
Was it Pong or Ping or whichever they called it, where you had just one?
Oh,
little
like the
ball
table
that went-
tennis thing.
yes, indeed.
Well, it was a couple of years after that. As I say, Space Invaders was the thing in the early 80s. That's how old I am. And yeah, I mean, I probably played more of it than I should have done.
What's your regime with the kids? I mean, you heard from Juliet these
Yeah.
15, 30-minute segments, which we'll find out from the family, actually, if that is absolutely true. But anyway, we have no reason to doubt her on her first evening with us. But in terms of your family, what is the regime? How do you rein it in?
They can have 60 or 120 seconds anytime they want. No.
It's as simple as that.
I love that phrase, downtime. Yeah, when we have some downtime and mum and dad, we want to do some chilling, then if the kids want to go on the computer, go on the tablet, sure, they can do so. Yeah.
But in terms of these skills, like communication skills, coordination, problem solving, learn the piano.
Absolutely.
You can become dexterous doing that. And look, I'm not a complete Luddite. I think it's important. But when you see what this Professor McFarlane says, she says, we're losing sight of teaching as a professional activity. There's a tendency to think of it purely as a craft and something that doesn't need much professionalism or deep thought. I beg to differ. And I think we don't want to lose that essence of teaching, of discovery. And if it's all about screens, I know that the future is technology and IT, and that's what our kids are that's how they're going to grow the economy, that's how they're going to survive and get pensions and look after us in old age. But I think let's slow it down and let's not forget those core values as well.
Interesting, when I was going through school, I remember finding things pretty difficult. And one of the reasons why so much that was being taught, whilst looking back, it was remarkably important that it was, or should I say, bore no resemblance and relevance to my life. And that was one of the major issues that I found. So whilst I'm very interested in history today, I was not that interested. I didn't understand why 1066 was significant. I didn't understand why the Great Fire of London or any of the other great moments or tragic moments in history were relevant. And I think that is part of the issue of making sure that there is some resonance from children who are at school with their curriculum, that they understand, because I didn't. And I remember not understanding, why is this even relevant?
So you think if it was presented to you in a more fun way...
In a fun way that it's a bit like hiding vegetables in sugar. You still eat your vegetables, but you don't realise that you've done it. And certainly when I went through, I'm sure it may have changed, but when I went through the school system, it was almost as if the more painful it is, the harder academically it became. There is a different route. And I think sometimes that route isn't always... I
hear what you're saying, but I don't think it's like that now. And I think that a lot of the tools that they use in classrooms are much more fun. I mean, there was a fundraiser at my kids' school to get more iPads and more interactive whiteboards. I mean, goodness, we had chalky fingers and that thing. And my friends and I, we were nudging each other at the fundraiser, thinking, the way they're billing this is, come on, we need some iPads for our poor children. It just sounded so middle class. But I understood that the school can't afford it. They needed to get some outside funds to have these tools so that they could make learning more fun, more relevant to them in the way that you're saying. But you think like history, it's not just learning dates now. They do horrible histories,
yes.
And it's all cartoons, and they learn about the blood and the gore, and they're shown all of the horrible, nasty torture. Yeah, and that's how they remember it.
Instead of learning the lineage of the royal family as we did.
And just going back on the games side of things, I came across in the last week or so a quite disturbing development in games. Mark Zuckerberg, the chief executive and founder, indeed, of Facebook, everyone knows how big, massive Facebook is, has bought a company which has developed an entirely holistic game in a helmet that when you put on this helmet, you are in the game. And what's disturbing about it is it's so real that you basically want to live there. Now, this is like science fiction. And, you can just imagine a whole army of children being immersed in this game, particularly if it's online and it's interactive with other kids. That, to me, is a very disturbing development.
We shall think about that while we hear from you at home, and also the headlines on the way. Jonathan Davis, economist. Juliet Mann is also wealth manager. Juliet Mann, broadcast journalist and media coach, and many other things as well, here to review the day, plus your reaction on 0207 224 2000. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. 11:30 is the time, and Valley Fontaine has the headlines.
Thanks, Simon. Police are still searching for the missing armed robber known as the Skullcracker, despite a reported sighting in Twickenham. The 55-year-old, who's serving 13 life sentences, failed to return to an open prison in Kent after being allowed out for the weekend. The former BBC broadcaster Stuart Hall has admitted indecently assaulting a girl aged under 16. He entered the plea at the beginning of his trial on 20 further charges of sexual offences against 2 young girls, all of which he denies. He's already serving a prison sentence for 14 counts of indecent assault on victims who are between 9 and 17 years old. The US has offered to send soldiers and hostage negotiators to help Nigeria find more than 200 schoolgirls abducted by Islamist militants. The rebel group Boko Haram has threatened to sell the girls into slavery. The mother of a teenager with Down syndrome has hit out after her son was held in custody for 9 hours. Abdul Al-Faisal was arrested and put into a cell after he broke into the sixth form college to retrieve his baseball cap. And BBC Trust Chairman Lord Patten is standing down from the role on health grounds following major heart surgery. He said he was leaving on the advice of his doctors. Lord Patten, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, also served as the last governor of Hong Kong. And London's weather, any evening showers should die away, leaving some late cool weather with a low of 9 degrees Celsius, that's 66 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the headlines. There'll be a full update at midnight.
You're listening to BBC London 94.9.
Good morning, London. It's The Breakfast Show with me, Paul Ross, and Penny Smith on 94.9 FM.
Well, thereby hangs a tale in more ways than one.
On digital radio.
Saville with the strike! Brilliant save!
On satellite.
What do you think of this story?
On the BBC iPlayer.
Good afternoon, London. I'm Robert Elms.
And now on Freeview, channel 721.
Sorry, what was that?
That's Freeview, channel 721. So retune your Freeview box and discover a new way to listen to London's radio station. BBC London 94.9 on Freeview, channel 721.
BBC London 94.9. Call 020 722 42000.
Text 81333. Start your message with the word London.
BBC London 94.9.
Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. 0207 224 2000 is a number. We'll return to your calls about all kinds of things and also look through some of the front page of the papers very soon. To review the day this hour, Jonathan Davis and Juliet Mann are with us. Jonathan, can we return back to you? We were saying earlier on that all governments in the run-up to elections want everything to appear very rosy, and indeed in this country we are told we have significant drops in unemployment and also rise in the forecast of certainly the money that we're all going to make in this country. But all is not particularly good with the worldwide growth forecast from the OECD.
Indeed, the Organisation of Economic Cooperation and Development has cut the global growth forecast again.
What does that mean to us?
Globally, they said that growth was going to be X. It's now going to be less than that. And of course, being an open economy as we are, we transact with other countries. So if other countries are doing less business, then that's going to have an effect on us. Now, in the budget 2 months ago, the Chancellor said that we're going to have growth this year as we did last year, and there's no doubt about that. And indeed, we're going to have growth for the next ad infinitum, as long as they've forecasted. But, that is highly optimistic. It's extremely optimistic because it assumes everyone else outside of the UK is okay. And nothing could be further from the truth. Because if you take, for example, the United States, the largest economy on the planet, the estimates because the numbers haven't quite come out yet, for the first quarter of 2014 for America is minus. In other words, America's going backwards. So America, the largest economy on the planet, is going backwards. And we know, for example, also that China, the second largest economy on the planet, is slowing down. Well, of course, that's going to have an effect on us in due course.
Of course, for most people, it'll be, as we mentioned, it's about the money they have and how much life is going to cost in this country. In terms of the two sides of this debate, obviously the coalition who will tell you that the unemployment rate has gone down and that our prospects are looking very good. The Labour Party in opposition are talking about that what they believe to be a cost of living crisis. What will life in this country, do you think, look like in a couple of years then, financially, for us, for people who are listening to the show, who maybe have a mortgage, maybe paying rent and have got a job with a relatively small or medium-sized company?
Well, quote, everyone, unquote, says that within a year or two, interest rates will be higher than they are today. First of all, on the positive side, in one sense, I'm not convinced of that at all. We've had the same base rate for now over 5 years. Japan had broadly the same, more or less, zero interest rate for 20 years. And I just wonder if we're sort of turning Japanese in the sense that we're actually in an era where costs are actually falling. We're in deflation. Certainly, countries all around the world are seeing record multi-year records of low inflation. Some are even seeing all-time records of low inflation.
But certainly where it matters to a lot of people, we're not seeing that. So we're seeing rents and house prices rocket, and we're obviously seeing the cost of food, for example, in the supermarket, other than a couple of your favourite stores, which we may well come on to a bit later in the programme. He's a huge fan of some of the discounters. Absolutely rocketing still.
The official statistics show that we have very low inflation, sort of 1.5% per annum. But those are the official stats. Perish the thought that the government should actually tell us the truth. Perish the thought that they should include, for example, the increase in cost of housing over the past 20 years.
But no government has ever done that, have they?
Well,
they've included the cost of mortgages in RPI, but they won't.
Exactly. Even though the cost of accommodation has gone through the roof in the last 20, 30 years, it's not reflected in the inflation statistic. Everyone knows that our energy costs are going through the roof. It's not sufficiently reflected in the official statistics. The point I'm making is that with low official inflation, I'm not convinced that we're going to see higher interest rates. So the borrowers who are listening to you will be thinking, saying a sense of relief, great, my mortgage isn't going to go up. On the other hand, those savers who are listening, they are going to continue to have extremely low returns on their deposits, 0.5% or 1%, when 5 years ago they were getting 5% on cash. You asked me what's going to look like in a couple of years' time. Well, of course, in a couple of years' time, it'll be after the general election. And I have little doubt that although we're in a period just now pre-election where the government is doing whatever it can to keep everything together, whoever's in power next time, they're not going to have that luxury.
What do you make of this?
I think there's going to be higher unemployment. I must finish. I think there's going to be higher unemployment. And if there's another global economic shock, well, I tell you, the one thing whatever government is will not be able to do, they will not be able to slash interest rates because they're already near rock bottom. That is going to be depressionary potentially.
I don't think that we're going to see a move on interest rates before the next election. I don't think anyone's going to do that because it's not exactly a vote winner, is it?
Why do the markets price it in, for those who may have heard this in the news today?
I would expect they are pricing it in because they can't think of anything else to do. I don't think anyone's going to put them up before the next election because, like I said, I think it was not a vote winner. However, I think it's probably one of the first things that any chancellor worth his salt would do once they're in power. It should almost be part of a manifesto to get people saving again.
Although I, like all our listeners, will remember that the Bank of England is entirely separate, their decision-making process, from central government.
It is, but I just can't see the government letting them rubber stamp what needs to be done, because I think that's what needs to happen. I can't see it happening in the next 12 to 18 months. But I would say to people to sit tight out there. Don't buy a property in London or the South East because it's completely overheated. And if anyone goes out and buys one, it's just going to fuel that even further. So don't go and buy a property. Sit it out until the next election. Interest rates will go up a little bit. Then savers will do well for having money in the bank. And then maybe we'll see a slight change. I don't think, though, that any government is going to let there be a huge crash like we had in the 80s. I don't think that anyone would be able to stomach that.
To which I would say, Juliet, I think whatever government there is of the United Kingdom, they are like fleas on the back of the global economic dog.
What an image.
Well, they have very little power.
It's making me scratch.
Well, indeed. As I say, when you have the largest economy in the world, probably in reverse, and certainly not growing very much, that's for sure, and the second largest economy in the world, slowing down, this is having a major effect on the global economy. The reason why the UK is having very good growth right now, and that is absolutely the case, is because we still have this emergency base rate. Emergency? Does anyone see an emergency? It's because the government is borrowing £100 billion a year to, as I say, pretend that all is well. Who are they borrowing it from? They're borrowing it from our children. And thirdly, this iniquitous policy, Help to Buy, which is hugely divisive. But, going back on your earlier topic of the last hour, 60% of youngsters will not be voting. Quelle surprise, we have Help to Buy, because it's going for the grey vote. The grey vote, they're the people who are voting. They know that the youngsters won't be voting, so they're throwing everything at the older generation, because they're the ones who are going to put the next parties in power.
Keep your reaction coming through. I want to go to some reaction actually before we move on. Andrew says on the email, Andrew in Stepney, we're talking about these addictive games you mentioned earlier on, and this professor who was saying that actually these Angry Birds can potentially be useful as part of the national curriculum. Regarding addictive games wasting our time, I think TV has got much the same very clever follow-on ads and soap operas with cliffhangers and roll-on programmes, selections and channels. It gets us addicted to a lot of wasting time and wasting our lives watching things like how to give a dinner party, how to be the perfectly dressed person to socialise with others, etc. But we just stay in watching rubbish, never going out and wasting our precious lives on forgettable dross. I threw my TV out 5 years ago. Best thing I ever did, says Andrew and Stephanie. And I have to say, when I was growing up, there were lots of children in my class who did not have televisions, whose families refused to have them. Now I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any.
Who doesn't have one in every room?
In every room, and possibly two or three
and on
in
the
some,
tablet and this and that. Yeah.
In case you're missing out. Gosh, it's a very strange world. Juliet Mann, Jonathan Davis review the day. Juliet, can we talk about going through the airport and how that security misery might well be possibly coming to an end?
Oh, I was so excited when I saw this story. 65 airports have been trialling this new system. Engineers in Oxfordshire have got a new scanner which can work out what liquid you've got in your bag. So instead of decanting your makeup remover into tiny little 100 millilitre containers, or instead of checking that yoghurt pot, or I think you liked a little ready mix G&T, didn't you, Simon?
Lovely. Or V&T, depending on the destination.
Yeah. So you instead of having to guzzle that before you actually go through, it would be able to work out that, you know what, this isn't part of a bomb making kit. This is not a threat. You can go straight through. So it can analyse it in about 5 seconds, so it's not going to take that much longer to go through. It's winning lots of awards. I mean, this can work out perfume, all of that. I think it's going to transform our airport experience.
And it's interesting, actually, because potentially this could be used by the supermarket as well to avoid these awful problems you have in the self-checkout. You just pop the good in there and it knows exactly what it is. We were saying that for many of the companies beyond passport control, this has been payday for some time, because whilst lots of people used to bring their own cans of cola through, or their own water or anything else, or indeed repurchase makeup the other side. The amount of makeup and various stuff you see in the bins when you walk through, you can open up 25 branches of a chemist of your choice every day, I imagine, with the stuff.
But also, aren't you amazed though sometimes that people don't know? And I wonder if it's just for show, that sometimes the airports have got lots of empty. They phoned up some of the drinks companies and the cosmetic. Can you send us some view from your display?
I think it's easy. I think it's easy to forget. I think it's easy to forget because what tends to happen is that people think, well, they're convincing you not to put your luggage in the hold. So they're convincing you to take it through with you, and when you go,
so you've forgotten that you've got, the 50% extra bathroom floor cleaner in your carry-on bag.
But a toothpaste, a tube of toothpaste, I've easily fallen foul of that. I can tell you for nothing. Although sometimes they spot it, sometimes they don't. Jonathan, what do you make of this?
Oh, I tell you,
are you a happy flyer?
Well, I don't do a great deal of flying, but no, I really don't enjoy the experience now. I actually physically being in the airplane and landing, yeah, that's okay, but no, who enjoys the experience of having everything checked? You yourself going through your bags to make sure that you don't fall foul of the rules, the 101 rules and regulations. Have you got a toothpaste tube which is over 50, or is it 75, or is it 100 mil? Who's to know what the rules are? And then, of course, you have to throw away things, as indeed my wife had to do a few weeks ago on the way to France, because she had half a kilogram over what she should have and all this kind of stuff. No, I tell you what, anything they can do to bring us back to sanity, to reality, where, the millions of us who just want to have a decent holiday, there has been overkill. For the last 10 years, since that fateful day in 2001, 13 years, there has been overkill, in my humble opinion. And come on, let's get some sanity and balance back in
Even though
traveling.
We have seen a shoe bomber, we have seen...
There's inconsistency. I mean,
that's true. If you go to other countries...
I'm a frequent flyer. Yeah. I travel a lot. I've got it down pat. I know that I just grab that is my travel bag. Here's what I take with my toiletries, etc. And yeah, it's easy to fall foul depending on the airport that you go to. I remember I once had a little bottle with just enough eye makeup remover for the overnight stay. And they took it off me. I had been given a gift from a company that I'd done an interview at, and it was one of those paperweights made of glass where they'd lasered. It was from Siemens, and they'd lasered inside this glass thing the train. It was very elaborate, completely useless.
They took it off you?
Yeah, because
Why?
they thought it was liquid, and it went through several times. That's why we could have really done with this new super scanner. But years ago, I actually smuggled a couple of knives on board an aeroplane as part of an undercover report for the broadcaster I was working for. The reason I did that report was because I wanted to show how inconsistent the rules were. Because
presumably you were successful.
I was successful. I was flying from Switzerland, where their national souvenir is the Swiss Army knife.
Of course.
And so, of course, they sell them airside. We also managed to buy...
Do they? They sell them beyond past. Wow.
And it turns out the rules are that if the blade is less than, I think it's 3 centimetres or 3 inches. I'm not 100% sure at this moment, but if it's
probably 3 inches. 3
yeah. So if it's less than that, then it's fine to have. But we had also pushed our luck, and in the town we bought a 6-inch blade with a serrated edge, and we thought, well, we'll put that in the hand luggage too. And I packed my bag with the one I bought airside just on top, because you didn't go through the airport security right until the end, you see, in Geneva. So I put the little sachet the little paper bag you get from the airport shop with the legal one, even though it's still a knife, let's face it, you could still really do someone damage with that, on top of the other one. So when it beeped and the guards opened the bag, I said, I just bought that, and they said, that's fine. They waved me through. So it caused...
And you got that filmed?
Yes, and it caused a bit of a stink at
Gosh,
the time.
I bet it did.
I
bet you're very
I'm
popular when you
petrified
turn
every
up at
time
the
I fly
airports
to Geneva. I'm absolutely petrified because I've heard stories of them holding grudges with journalists for parking tickets and this and that, and you being hauled out of hotels in the middle of the night. Although I have changed my name since then. One of the reasons why I took my husband's name was just in case. And actually, when I flew through Luton a few weeks after I'd done that, because we'd flown into Luton, I remember I had a brooch on, and it was confiscated because it was a weapon. This little tiny, and I thought, what? It's because they've recognised me, and because I didn't stitch them up, but it was an unfavourable report. My point of telling this story is that there are inconsistencies from airport to airport, from city to city, and from country to country, and that is why I think travellers like you and me get frustrated.
It's a really interesting story, actually.
And Simon, we're regulated to the ends of the earth, whether it's in where we can park our car, and in what we can say in an advertisement, what you can say as a broadcaster. But as everybody knows, if you're going to commit a fraud or an illegal act, you're going to do it, whether there's regulations or laws or not. And if someone's going to blow up a plane, do you know what? They're smarter than the guys in the airports.
I don't think they are that smart, because I think if they were, they would have managed to succeed. And it's the fact that they are bumbling. I also think, though, this is complete speculation, conspiracy theory, I think there's a lot of social profiling that goes on. I think they know who's going to do what. Oh,
there's an awful lot of social profiling. When I went away with a friend of mine who has a Muslim surname, and when we checked in, I got checked in and that was fine, and then when she checked in, they said, that's fine, you're probably going to find you'll get a second or possibly third security check on the way. And what he also added, which I don't think he probably should have done, is, because he said it was just flashed up on my screen, and he said it's probably because of your name. And it was as simple as that. And when we went through, sure enough, what I thought, because it takes so long to get anywhere, it had been an hour since we checked in, and we eventually then got to the gate, which is where this secondary check was about to take place. I didn't know. I'd forgotten. And when we beeped through and they said this, that, and they said, you've been selected. And I thought, this is an upgrade I tried to get, and it wasn't. It was for a second security check. It was actually this is the first time when I arrived back that I went through the red channel at customs, and I did that because I heard a couple in the queue behind us when we were coming back who said, and all I brought through was an apple, and it cost me $200 or something. I thought, well, I'm not risking that. So every airport I went to after that, I went through the red channel, to the point where they said to me, why are you even? I said, because I took loads of stuff from the plane. They give you so much food. I thought that will come in handy later on the coach on the way back.
What, the individually wrapped biscuits?
The bread, all the stuff they say you can't take through. So I took it through, and I said, look, if this is no good, just take it out. And they looked, they said, this is just stuff from them. I said, yeah, but they said, I said, no, it's fine, go through. But it is interesting, because you're right about consistency, because if it's good enough for the plane and it's still sealed, why can you not take it back into the country?
Indeed. And just on the point you're making there, that if someone was serious about blowing up a plane or taking control of a plane, and they had a Muslim surname, wouldn't they just travel under a
fake passport?
Exactly. Call themselves Smith.
Do you find it frustrating travelling? I mean, presumably you do it for your business, and you travel around the world, but presumably it's also something that if you could dispense with, you would.
Oh, of course, we'd all like to be beamed up, especially on the return leg. There's something about that, just being sent home. There are frustrations, but I actually enjoy it. It's all part of it. It kind of gets you in the zone. And also, I'm a mum of two, and there's all of the rigmarole of the school run and all of that. So when I'm going off on a business trip, it's also an escape, I have to admit. So I go to the airport, and I'm in grown-up mode, and I'm looking sagely at all of the people with young children pushing buggies and thinking, don't need to do that. So I enjoy it. Of course I don't enjoy it when it's delayed and all of that, but when you're an adult on your own who knows where they're going with just your hand luggage, it's a very different experience to when you're laden down with all the paraphernalia of kids and family.
And presumably it's often
and kid.
Business?
Yes.
Lovely.
Yes.
Never gone business myself, have you?
Oh, yes.
Well,
yes,
it's just me then. Go on.
A couple of times a year, I guess, these days. Maybe a little bit more even sometimes.
Very nice.
You need to do an outside broadcast.
I'd love to. I mean,
Yeah.
I did ring up a couple of press offices, and I'm so bored of doing that now. I'm pleading with them that they just simply won't do it now. I think I've missed that boat or plane as it is. In fact, they were talking about this amazing one-way fare, something like £25,000 that you could get, which was going to be the upstairs part of an A380. I can't remember what the circumstances
Oh, it looks
were. Do you
spectacular.
remember? Yeah.
Yes, it looked like a train cabin.
Yeah, with a
didn't
proper
it? But
suite
really glossy.
and everything you could possibly want. And I think you got connected with that. You got a masseur and a butler and everything else. But that is not going to be something I can afford ever. Right, just before we finish, I want to talk to you about a couple of headlines on the front pages of the papers today, not something you brought in. Daily Mail front page, squeeze on help to buy mortgages, Bank of England ready to act on house price bubble. Also on the front page of the Telegraph today is their headline, the version of the same story, which says, bank must burst housing bubble, force buyers to find bigger deposits to slow booming market that put economic recovery at risk. Just your thoughts on that briefly before we finish.
I think the editor had a hotline to you, didn't it, Jonathan?
They've just heard the show.
He called
They've
them.
just heard the show.
He called that before we'd even seen the headlines.
In my humble opinion, I think the bank will do absolutely nothing to burst any bubble. There have been countless bubbles in the last 10, 20 years, whether it's the stock market bubble, the dot-com bubble, the housing bubble first time round, the housing bubble today. Central banks don't burst bubbles.
They burst of their own accord.
Absolutely. Markets do it eventually. There are those who say that the housing market is never going to collapse. There, to me, is brainwashing supreme. I'm not saying that it's going to happen this year or next year. We had the hors d'oeuvre in 2008. I think the main course is still to come. I would say it's going to happen. It's going to start happening within the next few years. We'll see.
All right, it's good to see you both. Thank you for coming in on the programme tonight. Just before we do finish, Juliet, it is your first time here. Juliet Mann, broadcast journalist, conference moderator.
Oh, I love it when you
coach.
say them all. Yeah.
They're all there. They're all there. And they'll be said next time you come in. Just tell people what you do.
I'm a TV and radio presenter just like you, but I also go around conferences. I will moderate them, so I'll introduce all of the keynote speakers and also get to quiz them and kick off question and answer sessions, which I absolutely love. I do a little bit of corporate television, and I also get parachuted into companies and help to teach the chief executives and the chief operating officers how to deal with journalists like you and me,
yes.
to teach them a few of the tricks of the trade so they can polish their performance and I suppose use their TV opportunities and radio appearances as opportunities and don't see them as ordeals.
It's remarkable when you see people who have been trained, because you're constantly therefore trying to find that bit they haven't learnt yet, and you're trying this. No,
but if you can tell they've been trained, that they haven't been trained properly, because the idea is to make it seem like a nice, relaxed chat.
But the good ones, have been trained, even if you can't spot the training they've had. No, even if you can't spot, you just think you're too, because you can't run a successful company and be remarkably good on your feet when it comes to answering questions. Fascinating. We'll find out more next time you're in. Jonathan, if people want to find out more about you and about what you do, how can they do it?
On the website, which is jonathandaviswm.com.
All right. Anything more?
In order to find me, I'm on Twitter, but again, you'll find that through the website. And on the website, there's some blog entries there about what we think's happening and what's going to be happening in the world from an investment point of view.
When you go on there, you hear thunder cracks and woo, very haunted. No, you don't. It's a very serious website, and he's obviously very experienced in his field. Sorry, Julia.
Can I get my website in too?
You may indeed.
It's mrsmann.co.uk, and I tweet at JulietMann UK.
All right, it's great to see you both. Thank you for coming in. Simon Lederman Show, BBC London 94.9. More of your calls back from midnight till 1 on 0207 224 2000. 1 minute to midnight is the time, and Valley Fontaine has the headlines on the way next.